Have you ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted deeply? Have you ever realized that you were surrounded by a person who, at first glance, seemed trustworthy, but over time revealed their true character? The truth is that we are often surrounded by people who have very different intentions from what they show. They may smile at you, offer help, even appear to be loyal friends. But deep down, these people may just be waiting for the right moment to use you, manipulate your emotions, and eventually destroy your peace. The pain of realizing too late that you've been duped can be devastating. What's worse is when you realize that, while you believed in this person's good intentions, they have been undermining your trust, taking advantage of your weaknesses and exploiting your good faith. This can happen in any area of life, at work, in a relationship, in friendships. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late to turn back. But what if I told you that you could spot these signs before being manipulated? How can you spot a bad person? How can you avoid falling into the traps of someone who just wants to take advantage of you? Yes, it is possible to learn to recognize the attitudes and behavior of those who are trying to control your emotions and shape your decisions. Don't be fooled. The pain of being used can be avoided if you know what to look out for. In this video, you'll discover 5 clear signs that you're dealing with a toxic and manipulative person. Don't ignore these signs. Each one is a red flag that you are being emotionally manipulated. If you don't learn to recognize these attitudes, you could end up trapped in a cycle of pain, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. Don't wait until it's too late to protect your inner peace. The solution lies in understanding how these people act and thus protecting yourself before the consequences become irreversible. This is the time to take back control of your life and your choices. Don't let anyone take away your peace of mind or manipulate your heart. Now onto the 5 signs you can't ignore. Get ready to understand, once and for all, how to protect your peace and identify who is trying to use you. Before we start, are you already subscribed to this channel? Here, I bring you videos like this one to help you identify toxic behavior and protect your peace. If you haven't subscribed yet, click on the button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any important tips. Now onto the 5 signs that you're dealing with a bad person. Sign 1. Desire for control. We often get into relationships with people who seem well-meaning at first, but over time we realize that they have a controlling attitude. They start interfering in our choices, trying to convince us that they are doing it out of love, concern, or care. This can happen in friendships, family relationships, and, of course, love relationships. However, behind this facade of protection, there is often a deep desire to control what we think, do, and even feel. To understand how Stoicism can help us deal with this, we need to reflect on one of the major principles of this philosophy: self-control and the freedom of others. Stoicism does not seek to isolate us from human relationships, but teaches us to recognize the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. We can't control someone else's actions, but we can control how we react to them. This brings us to the story of Jack and Julia. Jack was the kind of person who always seemed very caring. He cared about Julia intensely, showed affection and interest in her life. At first, Julia felt valued, as if she had found someone who really understood her. However, as time went by, Jack began to interfere more and more in her choices. He said he wanted the best for her, but in practice he was constantly trying to mold her according to what he thought was right. When Julia expressed an opinion or desire that didn't align with what Jack wanted, he would use excuses like "I'm just trying to protect you," or "I know what's best for you." And little by little, Jack took away Julia's freedom to make her own decisions. He wasn't protecting her, he was controlling her. Stoicism warns us against this kind of behavior, teaching us that true freedom lies in living according to our own reason, without allowing others to manipulate us in the name of false love or care. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, used to say that our inner peace depends on our ability to distinguish between what is under our control and what is not. Other people's actions are beyond our control, and it's a mistake to try to control them. What we can control is our response to these actions and the ability to maintain our autonomy and discernment. When we are faced with someone trying to control us, Stoicism gives us the tool to look clearly at their intentions. Instead of getting carried away by the excuses and justifications they offer, we can use reason to understand what is going on. Controlling behavior is usually related to fear. The fear of losing something, the fear of being rejected, or even the fear of not having power over another person. This fear, as Stoicism teaches, is an enemy of reason. True love and care do not seek to imprison the other. They promote freedom and self-sufficiency. So the next time someone tries to control your decisions, whether in the name of care or love, remember the lesson of the Stoics. Ask yourself, is this person helping me to be freer and more independent? Or is they trying to shape my life according to their own desires? The answer to this question can be the first step towards freeing yourself from a relationship that limits your autonomy and seeking a healthier path based on mutual respect and acceptance of differences. For the Stoic, true protection comes from within. When we cultivate self-control and wisdom, we can face any attempt at manipulation without losing our inner peace. And as Seneca said, most human suffering comes from not knowing how to deal with what is beyond our reach. Controlling others is a futile attempt to impose dominance over what we cannot control. True strength lies in our ability to act wisely in the face of this reality and to protect our emotional freedom. Sign 2. The mask of charm. Charm is one of the most powerful tools someone can use to win the trust of others. At first glance, a charming person can seem like someone you can count on, someone genuine. Their smile is contagious, their words are sweet, and they always seem to know what to say. But as Stoicism teaches us, not all that glitters is gold. Sometimes charm can be just a facade, a mask that covers up selfish and manipulative intentions. Imagine the story of Mark, a man who seemed to be the embodiment of charisma. He always had a kind word to offer, made everyone feel special, and managed to enter people's friendship circles with ease. Mark seemed to be exactly the kind of person everyone would want to be around. However, as time went by, it began to become clear that behind that charming smile, there was an agenda of his own. Mark knew exactly how to please people, how to make them feel important, but this behavior was not driven by genuine concern for others. He was using his charm to gain favor, manipulate situations, and achieve his own goals. His interest in people was not real, but rather a way of exploiting their weaknesses. This kind of behavior can be difficult to detect, as charm is something natural and often harmless at first glance. But Stoicism alerts us to the need to discern what is genuine. True kindness doesn't depend on sweet words or superficial gestures. Stoicism teaches us to look beyond the surface and seek authenticity in our relationships. As Seneca said, it is not appearance but inner truth that defines a person's character. Someone's actions, not their charming words, should be the criterion for assessing their nature. When someone uses charm in a manipulative way, the aim is always the same: to gain control over others without them realizing it. Mark, for example, used his ability to please to ensure that everyone around him considered him indispensable. He knew when to compliment someone, when to do a favor, and, most importantly, when to keep people in his debt. The aim was not to build a real friendship, but to create a network of people who, without even realizing it, were working for him. As he took advantage of the goodwill of others, Mark built up an empire of subtle influences, where he controlled people's actions without them being aware of it. Stoicism, on the other hand, offers us the opposite perspective. Virtue should be our guide in interactions with others. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most respected Stoic philosophers, reminds us that we should always act with integrity, without the need for external approval or recognition. If someone relies on superficial charm to achieve their goals, this indicates a lack of internal solidity, a dependence on others to validate their identity and value. The Stoic, on the other hand, seeks emotional self-sufficiency. He doesn't need the approval of others to validate his virtue or character, because these qualities come from within, not from empty words or gestures. So the lesson of Stoicism here is clear. Don't let yourself be seduced by the facade. True goodness and character are revealed through consistent actions over time, not by words or one-off gestures. When someone constantly uses charm to manipulate or gain advantage, it's a sign that their integrity is lacking. This manipulative behavior should not be confused with friendship or genuine love. True friendship, as the Stoics teach, is based on mutual respect, sincerity, and genuine concern for the other person's well-being, without ulterior motives. So the next time someone approaches you with a charming smile and sweet words, remember that Stoicism teaches us to look clearly and discern the intentions behind that charm. As Epictetus said, it's not enough to be good, you have to be good for the right reasons. Authentic kindness is not a tool for manipulation, but a genuine expression of a person's character. And as good practitioners of Stoicism, we should always seek truth and authenticity, protecting ourselves from the masks that can hide people's true nature. Sign 3. lack of empathy in many of our relationships, whether with colleagues, friends, or family. Empathy is one of the most fundamental qualities for creating real and healthy connections. Empathy allows us to understand the feelings of others, to share their joys and sorrows, and to act sensitively in difficult situations. However, in some cases we come across people who seem completely devoid of empathy, which can be a clear sign that we are dealing with someone with bad intentions. Imagine the situation of a CEO of a large company who, during a meeting with his employees, completely ignores the challenges they face. One of his employees, for example, may be struggling with family or health problems, and the impact of this on their work is obvious. However, instead of offering support or even understanding the situation, the CEO makes insensitive comments, minimizing the difficulty and putting even more pressure on the team. He shows no genuine concern for the well-being of others, and his attitude demonstrates a clear lack of empathy. Stoicism teaches us that, although empathy is an important virtue, the focus should be on acting with reason, without allowing our emotions to control us. A true Stoic is not insensitive to other people's difficulties, but seeks to understand the situation rationally, without being overwhelmed by their own compassion. This doesn't mean being cold or distant, but rather acting in a balanced way, assessing what we can to help without getting emotionally involved in an uncontrolled way. Marcus Aurelius, for example, often reflected on the importance of treating others with respect, even when they failed to show understanding or kindness. In his Meditations, he reminds us that the other is what he is, and the only thing under our control is our reaction. Thus, when faced with a lack of empathy, Stoicism guides us not to react with anger or frustration, but to maintain our composure and act rationally, without allowing the insensitivity of others to affect us deeply. When we recognize a lack of empathy in another person, the key is not to allow this attitude to throw us off our emotional balance. What we can control is our response, and, as Stoicism teaches, we must focus on maintaining our inner serenity, regardless of the attitudes of others. People who show a lack of empathy usually act this way because of their own insecurities or emotional limitations. We can't change their behavior, but we can choose how we react and, more importantly, whether we allow these people to remain in our lives. The absence of empathy is often a sign that the person is more concerned with their own interests than with the well-being of others. This can be manipulated behavior to avoid responsibility, or simply a failure to understand the feelings of others. Seneca, in his writings, reminds us that the path of true wisdom is the one that teaches us to act with justice and understanding, always balancing our emotions with reason. In short, a lack of empathy is a clear sign that someone may not have the best intentions. If we are alert to this behavior, we can prevent it from harming us. Stoic philosophy teaches us to be balanced, not to be overly affected by the indifference of others, and, at the same time, to act with virtue, without expecting immediate reciprocity. After all, as the Stoics believe, our inner peace must come from within, and not depend on the behavior of others. Sign 4. Manipulation by guilt. Guilt is one of the most powerful emotions that someone can use to control another person. In a healthy relationship, guilt is something that only arises when there is a genuine mistake or moral failing that needs to be corrected. However, in many situations, especially with malicious individuals, guilt is used as a tool of manipulation. People who seek to control others, whether in personal or professional relationships, know how to make their victims feel responsible for something for which they are not to blame, or even for something that was caused by the manipulator's own actions. Imagine a situation in which a partner constantly makes you feel guilty for not doing enough or for not meeting all their expectations. He says things like, "If you really loved me, you'd do this for me," or "I feel so bad when you're not around. It's like you don't care about me." These phrases may seem affectionate at first glance, but they are a form of emotional guilt. Instead of expressing a healthy desire for connection, these words are intended to make you feel responsible for the other person's emotional well-being. This creates a cycle in which you begin to feel that you can't act or make decisions without worrying about the other person's reaction, even if you haven't done anything wrong. This type of guilt manipulation can be difficult to detect, especially because the people who use it are often skilled at making themselves look like victims. They manipulate the situation so that you feel as if you have failed in some way, even if you have done nothing wrong. This is one of the most insidious behaviors someone can display, because it's not immediately obvious, but over time it erodes your self-confidence and your ability to make independent decisions. Stoicism, however, offers a powerful perspective for dealing with this type of behavior. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, teaches us that we shouldn't let ourselves be ruled by other people's feelings. He reminds us that guilt should be an emotion that arises from a real violation of our own values and principles, and not from external manipulation. If someone tries to make us feel guilty for something we haven't done, it's important to notice this manipulation and reject the idea that we should feel responsible for something that is out of our control. For the Stoics, true responsibility is always internal. Legitimate guilt only arises when we violate our own values, when we take actions that are contrary to virtue and reason. Therefore, when someone tries to make you feel guilty for something that has nothing to do with you, Stoic wisdom suggests that you make a rational analysis of the situation. Ask yourself, have I really done something wrong? Am I being treated fairly? The answer to these questions can help to dispel the feeling of guilt and give you back control over your emotions. The most important thing here is that, by identifying that we are being manipulated by guilt, we can use self-control not to give in to this pressure. Seneca, in his writings, emphasizes that we should always act according to reason, regardless of external attempts at manipulation. If someone is trying to use guilt to control you, the first thing you need to do is stand firm on your principles and not allow this emotion to be used as a form of manipulation. In short, guilt should not be a tool to control our actions and feelings. Stoicism teaches us that we must be masters of our emotions and, more importantly, not let ourselves be controlled by those who try to manipulate our conscience in a selfish way. By recognizing this behavior, we can protect our inner peace, act wisely, and keep our integrity intact without giving in to the emotional pressure of others. Sign 5. Lack of responsibility in any healthy relationship, whether personal or professional. Responsibility is an essential pillar. All of us, at some point, make mistakes or fail in our actions, but the difference between a well-intentioned person and someone with bad intentions lies in how they deal with their failures. People who don't take responsibility for their actions, especially when those actions negatively affect others, are often a sign of manipulative and toxic behavior. They tend to shift the blame, never acknowledging their own faults and always pointing the finger at others. Imagine the situation of a team manager who never takes responsibility for the team's mistakes. When an important project isn't delivered on time, he quickly blames his subordinates for the failure, even when he himself didn't provide the necessary resources or adequate guidance. This lack of responsibility not only damages the team's confidence, but also creates an atmosphere of insecurity and frustration. Instead of learning from the situation and looking for solutions, the manager pretends that the problem has nothing to do with him and places the blame on others, keeping himself exempt from any fault. This type of behavior is common in people who have difficulty dealing with self-criticism. When someone refuses to acknowledge their faults, they avoid personal growth and perpetuate a mentality of victimhood and denial. Stoicism, with its emphasis on self-knowledge and self-discipline, offers a way of dealing with this dynamic. Stoic philosophers teach us that true moral strength comes from the ability to recognize our own mistakes and learn from them. Instead of blaming others or the world, the true Stoic takes responsibility for his part in what happened and looks for ways to improve. Epictetus, for example, often stressed that true freedom comes from recognizing our responsibility for the choices we make. He believed that, although we can't control everything that happens to us, we have total control over our responses and our attitudes. In other words, if something has gone wrong, the first step is to look inwards and ask, what could I have done differently? How can I learn and grow from this experience? When someone refuses to accept their part in what happened, or when they constantly avoid responsibility, that's a big red flag. This behavior not only prevents the person from growing, but also creates an environment in which others feel helpless and powerless. Lack of responsibility creates a cycle of lack of trust, which can be extremely damaging to any relationship. Furthermore, Stoicism teaches us that responsibility is not something to be feared. Instead of fearing failures or mistakes, the true Stoic faces them head-on. When a mistake happens, the Stoic doesn't despair or try to deflect responsibility, but sees it as an opportunity to learn and improve. Seneca often spoke about the importance of being honest with ourselves and accepting our faults. He believed that only when we recognize our mistakes can we truly grow as human beings. So when we come across someone who constantly avoids responsibility for their mistakes and tries to shift the blame onto others, Stoicism teaches us not to internalize this lack of responsibility. We can learn to keep our focus on our own actions and reactions, knowing that we cannot control the behavior of others, but we can always choose how to react to it. If someone refuses to take responsibility, this is not something we should let affect us. Our inner peace must come from within, not from the actions of other people. In short, a lack of responsibility is a characteristic that is often linked to selfish and manipulative behavior. People who don't accept their faults and constantly seek to blame others are those who seek to control situations without learning from them. Stoicism, with its emphasis on self-discipline and self-criticism, teaches us to be responsible for our own choices and not to allow others to drag us into victimization or despair. By taking responsibility for our actions, we can grow and create more solid and respectful relationships. So, had you heard about these signs of toxic people? Did you know that there were clear ways to identify who really means well and who is trying to manipulate you? Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something like this, or if you know anyone who has. I'd love to help you in the comments and exchange ideas about this. Now that you know the 5 clear signs that you're dealing with a toxic person, it's time to take action. Recognizing these red flags is the first step to taking back control of your life and protecting your peace. Emotional manipulation can be subtle and devastating, but with the right knowledge and perception, you can prevent yourself from falling into traps and get away from those who don't add to you. Remember, true strength doesn't lie in ignoring the signs or trying to save those who don't want to be saved. True strength lies in maintaining your integrity and understanding that, by protecting yourself, you are allowing genuine people into your life, those who really contribute to your growth and happiness. It's normal to feel fear or doubt when identifying these behaviors, but Stoicism teaches us to act with wisdom and courage, even in the face of adversity. Protecting your peace is not an act of selfishness, but of self-care. When you distance yourself from those who hurt you, you are making room for a more balanced, calmer, and, above all, wiser life. Now that you know how to identify these signs, the next step is to take action. Trust your instincts, be attentive to the behavior of the people around you, and never be afraid to distance yourself from those who hurt you. You deserve to be surrounded by people who respect you, support you, and want your good. If you liked this content, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone you think needs to hear this message. Your peace and well-being deserve to be prioritized, and that's why we're here, to help you build a wiser, stronger, and more manipulation-free life. Watch out for the signs, don't be fooled, and live with more clarity, balance, and confidence.